kijkt u naar een reportage in techno-stijl van Ian Kerkhof.
Techno. Computergestuurde dansmuziek waarin tekst geen rol meer speelt, is al jaren stevig in opmars. Ian Kerkhof keek terug en vooruit. En maakte een portret van een muziekcultuur die zonder beelden niet kan bestaan en die onlosmakelijk verbonden lijkt met drugs als ecstasy. Waaruit bestaat de aantrekkingskracht van techno? Is het een terugval op bijna primitieve rituelen of is het de lokroep van een technologische toekomst?
Something strange happened at the time of, particularly at the time of acid. House music had been around for at least 3 years at that point. Techno had been around for a couple of years. And when the first acid records appeared, they were so far from the classic structure of the popular song. And they were so immersed in sound that, and they happened to coincide with this emergence of a new youth movement, the first one with any dynamism for some years. And they set people off on this path of, growing up with a music which is purely to do with sound and rhythm. It doesn't have all these other associations of words. And that, plus the rise of ambient at the same time as the polar opposite of acid, seemed to open the field up for many musicians from different areas, whether it be improvisation or industrial or soundtrack composing, so on and so on and so on. And I can only see that as being a really good effect. And I've no objection at all to being called ambient or techno. I mean, people can actually call me what they want to call me if I have the opportunity to work, to record, which I certainly didn't have before this movement existed. And so I think that's a good effect, that it suddenly democratizes the perception of music even. That the perception of what is valid and what is so utterly marginal to be worthless has totally changed over the last few years. And I think as a cultural effect that's tremendous.
Also der Tresor öffnete seine Türen damals im März 1991, kurz nachdem beide Staaten wieder vereinigt waren, mitten hier im Herzen der Stadt Berlin und am Potsdamer Platz. Ich muss sagen, durch die Möglichkeiten, die der Mauerfall bot, es war einfach mehr Platz in Berlin. West-Berlin war ausgekundschaftet, also es gab keine Locations mehr. Und durch den Raum, der hier zur Verfügung war, gab es einfach mehr Möglichkeiten für Clubs. Die Clubs sprangen so aus dem Boden wie Pilze. Es gab eine große Anzahl von Clubs. Sie waren alle erstmal illegal, weil die Verwaltung der Stadt hatte andere Probleme. Die Verwaltung der Stadt musste die beiden Städte zusammenführen und konnte sich nicht um illegale Underground-Clubs kümmern. Wir hatten zu der Zeit teilweise in Berlin eine richtige Techno-Revolution. Wir hatten teilweise bis zu 10.000 Menschen, die sich am Wochenende auf größeren Raves an irgendwelchen völlig verlassenen Locations trafen oder in den Clubs. 10.000 Menschen waren unterwegs und das war eine großartige Stimmung auch in der Stadt. Der Tresor-Club war auch einer der ersten Clubs, der also Mitarbeiter fand, sowohl aus dem Ostteil wie auch aus dem Westteil der Stadt. Er war irgendwie auch verbindend, also für beide Jugendgenerationen. You know, I was walking around and around, you know, and then there was a room in a room, you know, and I saw this fucking big door, you know, this steel door. It's incredible, what is this? And then I went in here, you know, and saw this space with all these shelves. I said, wow, what is this, you know? And it was untouched over 45 years, you know, because it was exactly between the two walls. It was more into the East territory, but East people hadn't had any access to this space, you know. So it was, then I found out it was a Jewish bank, you know, and they have had the documents everywhere here, you know. Now you see also the ceiling, you know, this all concrete and steel, and it's about 1.50 meters thick, like this thick. I mean, you are safe if we have bombs over Berlin, you know. It's really like a bunker. And this actually is a place where techno for me started here in Berlin. Here.
What is interesting is, I mean, to me, techno has really seems from the outside to have taken off in Germany in particular as the new youth culture. And that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if you have any feelings about that, because you know the history of German popular music very well.
Well, I think in terms of German popular music, why techno and electronic music generally has succeeded as opposed to guitar music is for the very simple fact that most German drummers were awful. Yeah, and when they were playing rock music, they had an extreme difficulty in doing anything other than extremely plodding, with some very notable exceptions, of course, like Jeffrey Liebertzeit from Can was a wonderful drummer and still is a wonderful drummer, and Neu turned those kind of the kind of awfulness of German rock drumming into something really magnificent by just monotonously banging away at the same thing for an hour at a time. But after Kraftwerk kind of like and they freed Germany from those, freed German pop culture from that problem it had with drumming by turning it over to kind of computerized and pre-programmed drumming. And something that and of course the very fact that Kraftwerk existed gave Germany a tradition which you could work within, and I suppose before that you could kind of like say Stockhausen came earlier than Kraftwerk, but I don't know whether that really had a big impact on electronic music in Germany as a popular culture or not. But for certain it had an impact on the musicians. And,
I definitely, when I hear a proportion of German techno now, I think of those marching band rhythms. You know, there seems a direct link somehow.
Is that just an association that one makes between German culture and marching bands?
Possibly.
People tried to connect techno to fascism, and they saw there was no possibility at all to connect it to this rubbish.
But structurally it's very similar. I mean, if you speed up an Umpar band, you get something that sounds amazingly like techno, even in terms of the whole 4-bar structure and the short phrases that are repeated on 4-bar grids. I mean, I thought that this is a well-made point, that there is this sort of strange connection between the two forms that you would never expect to find.
There's a connection with certain forms of German techno. It doesn't have a connection with a lot of Detroit techno, which is built on shuffle rhythms and 12/8 and so on.
Detroit people used 4/4 beats loads. That's a fact, yeah. And I mean, you get so many shades of music. There's bad techno from Germany, sure. And there's boring techno from Detroit as well.
I think techno expressed for me the feeling of those years, you know. It's kind of a coldness of a big city life, like here in Berlin we have, and it's artificial, an art form to express it. It's a possibility for everybody who works with the computer to